Just a couple of notes up front as we kind of dig into this. Goal here is just looking at this approach to, as we're trying to just think about what publishers are going to do with all the things related to AI, all the existential threats and so forth. And, my goal with this particular video podcast is to, take some of my beliefs of where I think things are going, test them, as well as to, find people that are diving in. Shy is someone that supports the Beeler.Tech community and is definitely thinking about all of these things. And, we're going to talk a little bit about what he's up to. Um, but again, I kind of want to take this approach with everyone that if you've got something you want to share, we can certainly between the chat and so forth bring that up to happy to pop people up on stage as well. Um, and I think this format to me is just a little bit more organic, and so we'll just kind of go for that. This is not sponsored. It could be, but it's not. We'll work on that. Get some more people coming. The scope is wide. This is to me not always just about ad operations, but just overall publishing in general. It's kind of where, for those who have ever tracked kind of how I've approached my career, is I'm trying to solve my boss's problems and their boss's problems before it becomes my problem. So when I think about things like ad ops, I'm immediately going to traffic, and I'm going to all of those types of things that I have to, because I can't serve ads if I don't have anyone coming to my website. So that's the way I think about it. I tend to start this off with a lot of energy. I'm just doing this as like my standard warning that I usually get cranky on the course of this call because there's nothing but hard work left. It's difficult. Same time, I don't think we're going to be hitting necessarily all those particular topics, but there are some things that trigger me for sure. Yesterday's event, last two events, 2 days, we were at a conference, or I've been producing a conference, the Advertising Economic Forum. There were triggering discussions there. Let's put it this way, for everyone that's listening in that's a publisher, to just hear an entire other aspect of the industry to finance that isn't really part of our industry talk about us, it's not great. It's not great. Uh, no one's getting a checkbook out. But there are some things within it that I think were really kind of opportunity. So I want to talk about my event coming up in May soon, but I just figured that's such a good segue, Shai, because you were there for the day one and then part of day two. Love to get some of your impressions on some of the things that you saw day one. We'll start with kind of the founders things and stuff like that. Like really curious some of your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a first of all, great event. Rob and Tom, you guys produce quality events. It's a very different kind of event for folks who haven't been on it. It's not your typical ad tech or CAN or CES kind of event. It does bring in that voice from the outside, like Laura from Needham and Company, who I've done sessions with, and folks from the VC community, like Eric Franchi and the Imperium folks, and Sir Martin Sorrell, and very sort of high level view on things. So the first day was the kind of pitch competition, and one of the things that I actually got asked by Laura on a panel that I did for her some months ago, that there was a lot of talk about consolidation and the industry, ad tech, is it a shrinking industry, and consolidation. And, yeah, of course there's consolidation. We all read the presses every week. Some ad tech company buys another ad tech company, some media company buys another media company. Um, we have our own perspective on this, and I think it really reflects in the pitch competition, which is we create new connectors to new ad tech systems every month, and they're just new ones. And
Right.
we don't do them of our own volition. We do them because our customer cohort is asking for integrations into new ad tech systems and new things. And so every month we're building new ones, and it's like a conveyor belt of new stuff. And here we are, a month ago talking about consolidation and the space is shrinking, and then, well, lo and behold, there's a bunch of folks who just built a company in this space, some of which are already have traction. Maybe they're making, $1
Yeah.
million, maybe they're making $100,000, but still, it's like some folks are already out there doing stuff. Some of them are doing stuff targeting publishers, and I think folks here like know Jason at Mula and whatever. But like yeah, yeah, this is
Yeah.
still an area of investment. And so long as VCs are willing to sign checks to invest in companies that are doing stuff in this space, that's already, there's the signal of what people say, and then there's the revealed preference of what people do. And the fact is
Right.
that people are writing checks for ad tech companies, which signals that they do believe that this thing has a future, has a space. Um, you know, I'm not going to promise that everyone everyone is going to survive, whatever happens next, right? Like businesses are going to need to reinvent themselves, but I don't know. I'm optimistic. I feel like we've been through a bunch of these, you know, eschatological events in ad tech.
Eschatological. First time on the podcast, that word. Fantastic.
I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
And I don't know.
But like I remember when viewability was an apocalypse and ads.txt was gonna kill a bunch of businesses and
Yeah.
we've been through this. Brand safety. I mean, and all of these things are still problems in some sense, but
Yeah.
cookie
Yeah.
apocalypse, right? Like, whatever viewability Armageddon, cookie apocalypse, and now we have the AI name
I-
your end of days word. And again, doesn't mean that everyone's going to make it out alive on the other side of it. Some businesses are going to be distressed, and maybe some of them won't be able to make it to the other side. So that isn't to dismiss the seriousness of the problem,
right.
but I do think that when the dust settles, there'll be advertisers, there'll be publishers, there'll be dollars shifting. The spice must flow, right?
Yeah.
If the agency doesn't spend the money that they were given, they won't
Yeah.
get that budget next year. So they have to spend it. And I think they fundamentally don't want to spend it only on Meta and Google, even though that's the easiest thing to do.
Right.
Um, the they complain about the fragmentation of the open web. They complained about the fragmentation of multi-channel cable. Um, but I think that fragmentation is also where they have opportunity.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think that's right. And I had kind of as a statement that I think a lot of it's very easy to fall into the narrative of um, AI is going to swallow everything. Because you could have a conversation and we could sit there and go like, so, Shai, like, what are the things you like to do when you're not working? And you could say, and I'm like, well, AI could do that better, right? Like, and you just go down this path of that, and you could just say it's just a matter of time. And but at the same time, for someone to sit there and again, what I really loved about this particular day one, right? Because people showing off new tech, a lot of places to do that, and cool. I'm not knocking anyone else's version of it. What's different is to literally have them stand in front of, you know, probably the largest group of private equity people in one place. I won't say ever, but like it was dense compared to what I think I've ever seen anywhere else. And like it right off the bat, like first question, right, got right into the numbers. And it
Yeah.
was like I was so happy because it just led to this whole part of like I think everyone else in the room just went, oh shit, this isn't a puff up like, how cool are you? It's I don't understand how you're going to have recurring revenue if you don't establish this. Who pays for the tokens? Like it went just down the line of those
Mhm.
types of things. And so you suddenly were like, what a great show. What are the fundamentals? Now, the cool part was that most of those founders actually had answers to those questions. Like, I don't think anyone like failed. That comes to my mind. I could give it some more thought. But I will say there were some publisher focused ones. It was interesting, like Mosaic in terms of data and licensing and stuff like that. And I think that will probably turn into a conversation when we talk about what you're doing. Joe Leger, I mean, Jay was really important throughout that day one and day two. Just jumping ahead, so um, Jay and his company is talking about actually uh, measuring culture, right? Measuring like even giving people a score for whether they're doing that. And it was impressive because he asked one of the panels on day two, like, how do you think about that, or where does that fit in it? And for all these people pumping AI, they were like, we really haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah. Yeah, he
Yeah.
had a great presentation. I agree. And I think, there's a lot of people out there with a vested interest, and I mean that literally vested interest in hyping this kind of San Francisco technological determinism. Oh, the AI, it just must happen, and you got to roll over and accept it because it's just what's going to happen, and we're going to steamroll it if it doesn't. And I was I participated in a session earlier today with John Shankman from Attitude and Mike O'Sullivan from Trade Desk. And one of the things kind of came up there that I was asked was like, what's my take on this technological determinism? And the answer is like, it doesn't actually have to be that way. We can say no. Like, there's a lot of businesses out there, this painted future of agentic where, it's going to book your flight and book your hotel and book your Uber and do your groceries and what. And I'm like, why would Instacart ever let that happen? Why would United Airlines ever let that happen? Like, what? Besides the fact that they're media businesses and they want to sell you media and it's actually quite
Right.
profitable for them to do that, why would any consumer brand want to give the controls to somebody else? They're not going to let that happen. They'll play with it, they'll toy with it, they want to show innovation, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
but as soon as it becomes a risk to their core offering, they're not going to, I mean, this is what publishers frankly did with sort of outsourcing the relationship with their audience to search and social. And we're now
Right.
turning back from that and we're like, oh, actually, we are consumer brands and we need to invest in our direct to audience relationship,
Yeah.
whatever that means, community and influencer and newsletter and commenting and all of the things, right? Events. Um, so I just, I don't buy the determinism around it. Like there are real business reasons why some of this stuff won't happen. Like I don't think the New York Times is going to let someone else be the gateway to their content. I just don't think so. And they're
Yeah.
probably the paradigmatic example of a publisher that never forgot that they're a consumer brand, partly because they have such a big subscription business and whatever, but that all wasn't always the case. We all remember when they turned on the paywall and, there was some drama there. Um, but they believe that that's their product and they're going to want to control the consumer experience around their product.
And what's amazing, what you just did there, connected to what Rashad said, Tabakwala said at the beginning. And again, if there's like one thing to follow in our industry, it's Rashad and his podcast. And we have him speak at the beginning of the event to set the stage, and then at the end, and he recaps it. And Chad talking about the New York Times, he's like, I was part of the innovation project discussions long ago, and the conclusion was um, to be like the future is not us being a newspaper, right? They kind of had to wrap their head around that. So, am I having connection issues? Am I dropping
I
in or
hear you
okay?
fine. I don't know
All
if
right,
other.
cool. All right. Let me know. I just saw a little bit of a flicker there. Um, but yeah, so like there's this piece of that. Like again, I'm also about that. And I also think that there's just opportunity that is not all just about that. So here again, these founders are sitting there saying, oh, everyone had at their core AI. But some of them talked about the fact that like you don't want Gen AI to be the backbone of everything you do. You know, you need zero hallucinations, right? You need like and so people were talking about those types of things to culture, to all these particular pieces. So felt like there was a lot of different things. It was different, a lot of agency stuff as well. Um, I have a couple other things. Again, if you've got something, throw it out there, Shy. And if anyone else that was there wants to throw anything out there that was there or questions about it. Um, some of my favorite lines. One was from Rashad. This is a little bit self-serving, if you will. People who go to the same conferences time after time always wind up getting surprised.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's this piece of it of going like, if your focus is only ad tech, you're going to go, what happened when things happen to ad tech from outside? We need to expand all the things that we talk about beyond just our world. Um, I hit on the part people. Some of these people are modeling a whole bunch of things and investing in things, but when they hear like, what do you take in terms of people's brand preferences and what they desire versus what they need? Suddenly, people couldn't quite track the, like suddenly things kind of fell apart in their arguments. I felt. Uh, Joe Marchese has a book coming out. I will pre-order this book. I I've known him to be super smart. He blew me away. I don't know, Shai, if you had thoughts on some of what he said, but just the fact that, like, well, one thing he said about our industry, so I'm going to say it out loud, right? Um, to be an ad tech, you don't have to commit fraud, but you certainly have to ignore it. And I thought that was kind of like one of those statements of like, like a dagger in the heart of like, oh, you know, folks, we have to
Ah,
we have to work on
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Fraud, waste, and abuse. It's everywhere. But
Yeah.
for what it's worth, I mean, I think the crowd here, the publisher side, has been primarily the victim of fraud, waste, and abuse, and much more so than
Right.
obviously the folks are taking the money from where the money funnel is coming from, but invariably that means that the money isn't arriving where it should. So like
Yeah.
we're just as much victims of that as everyone else. I mean, and part of this again ties in with some of the pieces from the previous conversation I had today around the complexity of the programmatic ecosystem, the advertising technology ecosystem, some of the reasons the walled gardens win. Again, the expressed reason why they win is, oh, they measure themselves and whatever, and it's great, and you have closed loop attribution, and all of this sounds very easy. But the reality is, Facebook measures its own homework, which again, I'm not saying that the ads don't work, but nobody else is we're not allowed to do that. Um,
Right.
they also run ads against UGC, which again, I personally don't think is a bad thing, but in the open web, they think it's a bad thing. The advertisers, right? So you get to kind of, but that inconsistency isn't because the reporting is so good. It's because it's so simple. It's
Right. Right. Well, that hits to like start of the day too. And again, I feel like Brian Weezer's very, very smart, so I will not say that I got one up on him. But there was a piece where there was a report, and I have not had a chance to look at it, but A&A came out with their report about the overall transparency of the industry. And I think Brian's takeaway from it, and either it's from Brian's report, which again, some of you probably would love to get that report. It's a little bit outside maybe some price range here. He's for analysts, not necessarily for just those of us that are curious to the actual report. But he was like, marketers are choosing convenience over trust, and that of course is like my go-to word of and that. And it was just interesting for Brian, like for him to actually kind of like push back on it. It's like, well, we who really needs trust? And I'll talk with him a little bit later about that. And it was a little bit of like, well, some people trust New York Times, some people trust Breitbart. I'm like, well, if that's the nuance of what you're saying, it still comes down to trust, right? It's a matter of sitting there going like, how do you want to build a narrative in which you understand the world? You will have your sources, but if you have no trust in anything, you can't even function. So there was a little part of that that I was able to kind of take stabs throughout the whole day on that
Yeah,
particular
I mean,
argument.
and I think he was sort of commenting a little bit on, or maybe is it Sir Martin Sorrell, I think, sort of hinted that maybe some of the recent challenges that like the trade desk has had has more to do with more like a carriage dispute than really that they care about transparency or whatever. Like transparency is a great excuse to hook on to
Right.
when what you want is something else. Um, but again, I think the revealed preferences of advertisers and agencies is convenience is more important than transparency, than quality even.
And we have to accept that. Well, how do I put it? Because I'm in this concede nothing mode, right? But there's a part of it going, that's how they buy. Acknowledge it, figure out how to make it easier to buy from you, right? How easy to sell to them, and try to be convenient. Not easy, but that's what you have to do. Um, while sitting there, just there again, I believe there's going to be a need for friction in the like, in the overall space. Like people are going to crave that. Actually, again, to your point earlier, like agencies can't just if all their job was to hit the easy button, they are not going to
Yeah.
get their fees at the same level that they would to function. So,
There was a demo at Marketecture Live the other week where I guess it's Pubmatic showing sort of sale agent or buyer agent and MeQ and buying something agentically and whatever.
yeah,
And there's a whole demo on the screen, and I heard someone whisper behind me like, if I was a MeQ customer right now, I'd be wondering like, if this is so easy to do, why am I paying you so much? Um, right? So
yeah.
there's some of the friction goes away with agentic perhaps, and maybe this is a good segue. There's an opportunity in that. Like if we can, there's complexity in this space, and Mike O'Sullivan said this earlier today as well. Like there is inherent complexity, and that's, we're not going to be able to hide that necessarily, and it might not be a good thing to hide that. Right? There's complexity in financial markets too, and we don't just say, well, it's too complex, so we're not going to trade. I think there's a way to make the complexity more manageable potentially with some of these new tools that are at hand. And um,
It's a good segue. I have more on the other event, but I kind of think that is too good of a segue to just sit there and say and talk about this because yeah, like that some of what people add as value is going to change as some things just aren't as complex, and there'll be other complexities that come along with it. Believe me, again, we're good at that. But there's a part of that that goes to, again, your recent announcement about the MCP server, and I felt like why don't you talk a little bit about where that idea came from, what your thoughts are, and then I'm just going to be like honest that I'm pretty good vibe coder. Really haven't turned my eyes on all the MCP opportunities. Like I'm not Claude coding, I'm more Claude co-working than on that part. But like, it's Friday at 1:30. It's very, very soon I might be just sitting there flipping that up and plugging in every MCP server I can to figure out what this is. So I might need a little entanglement. You answer to the level you can, but like talk a little bit about like, where you're coming from with this.
yeah, yeah, happy to. Thanks. So the story really has two beginnings, and you're actually tangentially involved in both of them. So somewhere in the first half of 2024, Burt built an MVP of something we called the Burt GPT that I think you might have seen. Maybe some other folks
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
might have seen some of it. Early testing showed that it wasn't being used the way we thought it ought to be used, or what we thought it was for. Well, also it wasn't used much at all, but it was more like an intercom kind of support chat. Like people weren't using it for data analysis, and we sort of scrapped it, go back to the drawing board. November 2024, Anthropic releases the Model Context Protocol, MCP, and it really starts gaining a lot of traction during 2025. What is MCP? It's a you can think of it as an API for the machines, right? For agentic and LLM-based systems can interact with sort of anything using an MCP, any sort of external data source. About half a year later at Cannes, you do a thing with Tom Triscari. There's something on the beach, and I hang out with Tom later, and he kind of weasels a nagging question into my head, which is 5 years down the line, there is no UI. What is BERT? And I think this is a question for a lot of SaaS companies. A lot of SaaS companies ultimately are some kind of dashboard. Like we are perhaps more so than most, but
But
ultimately SaaS companies are like, and this is your dashboard. There is no dashboard in 5 years, is what he's saying, and whatever we can argue the merits
yeah,
of or the veracity of that, but it doesn't really matter. And the question's sort of been nagging me ever since. And you know, when I joined Burt, we'd been toying around with the idea of sort of Burt for X, where X would be like Power BI or Tableau or Looker or something. But ultimately, we felt that we were actually able to provide a better experience for our users, you all.
mm,
And but in this case, I think the better experience is empowering you with the tools that you're already using. And so, we released an MCP server. Um,
can I just jump in though real
yeah.
quick because one thing that changed along that same time frame because I do remember again you were asking me about kind of this chat GPT version of interacting with the content. And I think and there were some other people that were part of that. And there was a piece that we all kind of were like, well, people really know what to ask.
Mm,
Like, will salespeople know? Like, again, if you're giving them this little blank thing, does anyone even know what to do? So, like, I would say 2 years ago, I would have sat there and go, well, of course you're going to have a dashboard. What would be really cool is that you could dive in and further, which is just dashboards on dashboards.
yeah.
We overall, I think, have all gotten that prompt. We are all amateur prompt engineers. And the idea of, I want something where I can ask the question I actually want to ask doesn't seem like such a stretch anymore. There's definitely guidance and whatever, but the systems can help you with that. And I think that was like the first pass at those things was like you asked it a question, it's like, I don't know. And you're like, well, then I don't know how to ask the question. There's an interaction level here that suddenly I think like again we've grown now that now this idea of like where you were going of like do we even need a dashboard suddenly becomes a really interesting thing where a couple of years ago I couldn't even wrap my head around that. So go ahead, I'm
Yeah,
sorry to
yeah,
cut you
yeah.
off because we want to, yeah.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think as time progressed, right, the technology matured, but also the adoption matured and well, skyrocketed, but also sort of matured. And like we understand that you may need to like prompt engineer to your point that it's not obvious necessarily on first glance how to operate these things, but once you dive into it, it becomes a really, really powerful tool. And,
Hmm.
some of us on, the edge of the adoption curve are already there and building agents and doing all this stuff. And um, anyway, we sort of came to the conclusion that the future of sort of where we fit in with AI and stuff, it's definitely not another chatbot to manage, right? But we see Bert's future as a smarter, intelligence data layer that empowers the tools that your organization is already using and trusting. Um, and so, we've always prided ourselves on being an extension of our customers' teams. And so now we're more of a seamless extension of your infrastructure, almost you can think about it. And this stuff is all moving fast, I should say, so we released version one, I guess, of this thing. Basically, the past week. I mean, we announced it the past week. We'd been building it for a while with, I hope they don't mind that I call them out on this, with Thomson Reuters, where the first external MCP that they've integrated into their enterprise-wide copilot called Open Arena or something to that effect.
Hmm.
Um, which speaks volumes, I think, to the security and kind of the caliber on that. I think that trust needs to be embedded in these things. It's all new tech, and there's reasons to be worried about some of that stuff, but we wanted to make sure that we built this in a way that satisfies sort of the enterprise customer. So one, it's out there. We've already run a bunch of demos to a bunch of eager customers this week, but it is the first version of this. We represent 2 out of the 14 MCPs on the IAB registry. There were 10 last week that we were two of. So this is moving fast. Like this is adoption. It's growing. It's everywhere. Um, but yeah, I mean, so for publishers, data governance and workflow integration, I think are critical. Some of our motivations have to do with Burt ourselves, right? The next generation of our products are themselves going to be built on this MCP. Like this is foundational tech for our own usage.
Right, right.
Um,
Well,
we're,
I mean,
yeah,
there's a couple pieces there. And again, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, and I think it's something for everyone else. And again, if people have questions and whatever, by all means, throw them out there, right? But like, um, to my very point about like prompts and how people have gotten used to prompts, we've all gotten kind of vibe codey in terms of like, oh, I could connect that system or whatever, and I can pull that report out of GAM, and I don't have to do quite so much work. And it's like, which is like a really good step. If you're not doing that, play with that and do that. It is not, what I'm about to say does not mean that that is wrong. There's another layer to that, right? And layer is the right word, which is to start to go, what you really need is to get these data things together in ways so that, and governance is like the key word there, right? So, I mean, hopefully no publisher that's listening right now uses Gen AI to create your reports for your clients. I'm sure, they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, completely made up, and Godspeed. But there is an aspect of getting it right through all the steps, and I think that that's a part that like, so if you create a agent or you do something where you like pull a report from one system and then you're like, oh shoot, I have to get that data from that system, you're going to create this whole just spaghetti of just
yeah.
all these things connected to all these places. And that's like the next generation of this is MCP, right? And a few other things that sits there and goes like, okay, work with someone to get your data, get those connectors worked out so that then when you go to access them, you're not accessing them individually, you're going to something that
Exactly.
has all that stuff, right?
That
And
it
is kind of responsible for like, I got the numbers, I got them.
exactly that it's all normalized, that it all speaks the same language, what these folks call a paid impression, these folks call an ad impression. Don't expect the machine to know that these things are the same thing if you didn't tell them as much. So much like don't expect the machine to know that Amex and American Express are the same thing if you don't tell it as much. It might know, but it might not, right? Um,
Yep, yep. I've created myself a report or through various sources I'm pulling down what are opportunities potentially for direct sold in programmatic. And 1 week, the three of the top five clients were actually the same client, just named differently or whatever. So I'll just go to this really quick funny story of like years ago. I just remember it was like Salesforce and MediaOcean were connecting, right? And they were like this whole like they pulled together some pretty good people together to sit there and talk about like how all of this will be integrated and whatever. And we all got in a room and said like, what's the first thing that we need to solve? And everyone was like, well, what we name the companies, and it was like,
Entity resolution.
oh
Yeah.
my God, like, yeah, how painful. But there's a part of that then, like, so MCP now, so my question to you then, right, is okay, well, MCP gets me that layer, but now as a publisher, I guess what you're offering again is the flexibility. So instead of, I mean, again, obviously someone could use the platform still, right? You're not like to turn that off. You're just offering that if you sat there and said, "Hey, I have a different way by which I want to work with this data, have at it, and we have that particular data layer." Is
Yeah,
that?
there exactly. There's sort of two ways that we're thinking now. And again, this is early days. We'll obviously discover how it's going to be used, but two ways that we're thinking now that folks might find this useful for. One is around just sort of data democratization, and Bert's always been very open around that, and you can share dashboards with people who don't have a Burt login and whatever. Like we've always been as open about that as we could be, but still, if you have some sales rep in, some territory somewhere that has a question about, ad performance for an advertiser from last year, um, yeah, they can shoot an email to a BI person in another territory, maybe a different time zone, right? Like, and half a day later, they get an answer. Or they could just tap into the enterprise-wide Copilot or Gemini or Claude or whatever it is and just ask the question and get the answer right away. So it's a little bit of that where just like enabling this for a larger audience without
Mm-hmm.
needing to fully understand the depth and breadth and UI of BERT and data sets and all of the complexity around that. Just try and get a quick, easy answer. Um, and the other piece has to do with agentic and where agentic advertising is going. And this might be early days, we don't know. We're in talks with folks like PubX who built a sales agent and MediaOcean has some interesting ideas about the
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem, what they're thinking. I don't know how it pans out. I have to be honest. Like it's still a bit difficult to see beyond the event horizon of all the stuff that's moving and changing and AdCP. And what I do know is that whatever the sales agent is, however it's set up, if it lives in Salesforce or if publishers build it or wherever it ends up living, um, it's going to need intelligence to be able to answer the RFP, for lack of a better word, that the buyer agent is going to present, right? It's going to need to know forecasting. Can I
Mm-hmm.
even run this campaign? Can I run more of the campaign than what they asked, right? Like, it's going to need to understand pricing, and that ties in with benchmarks and what did I do for these guys last year, and et cetera, right? Like there's a bunch of intelligence that has to
Mm-hmm.
exist in order to respond to an RFP. Again, all of this happening agentically in milliseconds, presumably, but um, there's not a quick and easy answer to this stuff. This isn't programmatic where there's a floor and that's whoever commands the highest CPM win. This is supposed to be at least. Um,
Supposed to be. Yep.
Again,
Yep.
neither of
No,
us knows
we
exactly how it pans out.
right.
Supposed to be something that solves for the RFP problem, because that's the real problem that I feel like on the demand side they want solved. An example that you sometimes give, like left-handed golfers, right? Somebody wants to run a campaign for left. How do they get that across, 10,000 publishers like that? That's a challenging thing to do today, but agentic should be able to make it much simpler. But if you're golf.com, what do you reply to that? Like, if you have the inventory and whatever, great. But maybe this is a bad quarter, so we can accept the pricing that's below our floor that we usually wouldn't. If it's a great quarter, maybe that's not what we do, right? Um, some of that stuff is a bit too dynamic and surfacing that intelligence. And again, I don't know if there's a human in the loop or not. Do we surface that intelligence to the human operator and they make the call? Do we surface it directly to the agent? Again, I don't know.
Right. And or both, right? There'll be some
Yeah.
things that you just let go and deals you make, and others where you actually have a person that does it.
But the
But you
point
were, I
is,
mean, yeah.
wherever the sales agent lives, if it's Salesforce, if it's the ad server, if it's an SSP, again, everyone seems to be building one. you're going to need something that looks at everything, which is what Burt always has done, right? Like corral it between your three ad servers and 2 dozen SSPs and right? Like um, so
Yeah,
that's I
you're
think the
absolutely
part that
right.
we fit in.
If you remember, I did that poll very early days. It's probably time to do it again of like whether publishers thought they were going to build their own like sales agents, and
Mhm.
like the majority said yes. And then for those that aren't, they were like, "Who are you going to have do it?" And some people said SSPs, some people said order managed systems, some, like their data platforms or whatever. Um, but I just remember the light bulb went off when I was like, "Why would I have an SSP create a sales agent?" And someone's response was like, "Why wouldn't you have all of them do it?" And that was like, okay, hold on a minute. To your point, of like not knowing how this plays out, right? The future of this is potentially, and again, like we got some really good people on here. You can by all means poke holes in this, but I think I could turn right around and probably go back and do the same to any other argument here, right? Of going like, there's definitely going to be an orchestration level. If you're a publisher, you need something that understands what all of these things are going out and doing, and is it making you money? Are you going to be more profitable by doing any particular strategy over another, right? That publishers seem to have always been wanting that. Somehow operating without necessarily all that. I mean, that's a glib statement. I retract that statement. But there is a piece of going like knowing what each partner does for me is part of the transparency issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
This agentic piece starts to potentially, again, we always have to qualify every statement with this, um, bring that together. And then the idea that like Pubmatic having their, my first reaction is I'm not interested in Pubmatic creating my seller agent unless all that they're doing is whatever secret sauce they're doing related to my inventory that I can see what they're doing with is in my best interest because they are going to get demand that I cannot get through whatever this other means. And you can go like, well, why would anyone even go that path? You don't know.
Yeah, the why would anyone even go that path to me is the big one because we this isn't a buyer agent doesn't need the consolidation. Like, why would a buyer agent care how fragmented ad tech is or publishing is rather? Um, Go to all
Right?
top 1,000 publishers, public sales agents, agents.txt file, scan the web, find the publishers that you think make sense, shoot them an RFP, get the response, narrow it down to the 500 publishers that you care about, that make sense for you, and execute deals with it. Like I don't know how it's going to look like. Again,
Right. Well, and
this is all science fiction a little bit.
right.
Um, but
And you
I
can sit there and look at that and go like, there's a certain amount of compute and cost to that. And if compute ever goes up, again, people are going to really hurt with that. So someone could create efficiency, but like if all they're doing is adding that efficiency, still feels like not a great model because that I think
yeah.
that just pushes that down. So I'm sorry, I just want to make that kind
Yeah,
of
no,
point of like,
I agree. And look, I think SSPs probably need to reinvent themselves a little bit in this world. If it materializes the way some folks think it's going to, maybe all of them sort of become DSPs, which they're kind of all a little bit doing as well anyway. Or maybe they expand into broader pub tech as well as sort of a hedge against the SSP as an
yeah,
agent acting on behalf of publishers isn't really needed anymore in that capacity because there are cheap software agents that do it better and cheaper, right? So I don't know. Again, this
yeah,
is all a little
yeah,
bit science fictional, but I do think there is opportunity here if we can shape this in the right direction. Um, Again, from the little that I got with Anthony that you brought him from Media Ocean, that you brought him in to Basecamp, and we have some follow-ups and stuff. Like I do think there's interest with fairly powerful organizations who can shift things around um, to move more to a direct IO model for publishers, which I think would be very beneficial. Um,
hmm
they have some ideas that I don't know will entirely pan out the way they think they will, but I am very supportive of that, and I think we should all be supportive of that, and helping sort of create that world. Because I think the reason programmatic works and the reason it's managed to scale has inherently to do with the fact that it's commodified publisher inventory. It's made impression A and impression B and impression C across different publishers, different opportunities be transacted as commodity as if they are the same. Um, with identity sort of being the only
Right.
arbiter of differentiation. And I think that's hurt publishers a lot. Um, and I think this is a world where unique executions and, again, not knocking the glorious value of the 300 by 250, but like I think there's more that publishers can do and do in sort of direct IOs and sponsorships and this type of stuff that could be better empowered through these newer software tools than RTB. Again, programmatic just means using software, right? Like we're talking RTB. Agentic is also programmatic, but I think that it's the next generation and should empower if done right. And we all have a part in making sure that it is done right and empowering publishers to sell their wares in a differentiated manner that lets you guys keep that premium value that you see today from direct IO versus the commodification that happens with RTB so that you have the scale and the
Right.
efficiency and even price discovery, and we need to figure out how that works,
Yeah.
um, with the capabilities and customizability and the premium value that you can layer on top by virtue of being able to sell direct.
Right. No, and just kind of where I stand with golf for, think of it all the times you just qualified yourself, and I do as well
Yeah.
when I'm talking about this stuff. Just the fact that like I've been presented that there's an opportunity that someone wants to buy our site agentically. And I'm using that as an opportunity. One, first of all, if there's experimental budgets out there, I know they're experimental and you can't build your business off just like trying to, I'll take them. I'll take them. Okay. Now, if they're all CPA deals and CPC deals, I'm going to be a little bit like, but in my mind, this is the opportunity to rally organizations together who feel like they have all their ducks in a row to actually have your ducks in a row. Again, you've heard me talk about this where it's like um, my love of self-serve is not necessarily that I am going to go out with self-serve products. All I know is that if I actually needed to do something where the buyer buys and it goes through the entire thing all the way to billing and it works and it is repeatable, you have yourself a process.
Yeah.
You have figured some things out. But if your rate card is, well, this is the numbers we use, but of course, keep in mind that, Carl does this with them and that and whatever, and you got to check with Joe before you do this and that or whatever. You do not have a rate card. You are not prepared for what is potentially, again, and all you heard Laura Martin talk about yesterday was just speed.
Yeah.
And so the idea of sitting there literally be like, think of as everyone that's a publisher that's on a call, just think about what it takes for you to make a decision about whether to move the menu hamburger thing from the left to the right, how many meetings that would take.
Yeah.
And just realize that like the future is it's already figured out by the time you even ask the question. Like on those particular pieces, right? Like I think that there's a part of that like this is the time to get everything kind of in a row. And so these are a process, which is another reason why I think the MCP thing is interesting, right? Because I do think there's going to be places where you do want that bot experience, and you kind of want that and a dashboard, right? Like there are, again, how we interact with these things will take from where we are today to what the future. When we do this podcast in 5 years, and we both have like we look like Geordi from Star Trek and whatever, and
Yeah.
and we're actually speaking in binary or whatever,
Yes.
Whatever's cool at the time, hex, maybe it's hex at that point. But there's a piece of that, like whatever. But like, But one of the things that you did say earlier that I'm going to ponder, and I don't know maybe if there's a really anything to this. One of the things that I've seen in organizations that's big enough to have an analytics department, right, and or IT that's supporting a lot of people is they have to go to generic. You mentioned Tableau, and Tableau is something that works across all these things.
Yeah.
But if you're an ops, that's not exactly always what you want in that way, right? There's just like that other level of, and I would think other departments probably have their little pieces to it.
Hmm.
So the idea of, and I'd say, I think, sorry, I hope you don't mind my kind of saying, like, I think MCP is the now. There may be whatever the next thing of MCP is, right? But we're all on this journey. Like, if you don't, well,
Yep.
let's not wait for the future because right? But there is this piece of it of going like, me working with my ad ops focused data and being able to get what I need out of it, but also get it to an analytics department, get it to someone else in the way that they want to. And again, I like you're talking about
Yep.
someone in Iowa doing a report and finding their little thing. Hopefully they're good enough to prompt that. But I also know that I could create it for them or give them the like
Exactly.
and away we go versus
Exactly.
now it's like don't like another email of another I need these numbers, it's Friday at 2,
Yeah. That,
type
no,
of
that's
bullshit.
that's actually exactly how we're looking at it. Invariably, I think almost all of our enterprise customers ask us to dump the BERT normalized data into their data lake, Snowflake or BigQuery or whatever it is. But invariably, also all of the AdOps, RevOps folks end up using the BERT UI because it is built for this use case. It's easy. You don't need to know SQL, right? Like you all know it. It's just a lot simpler and domain knowledge built in. And I think that's what we're going to see now, right? Like a lot of the companies, and we're seeing this even in market reports that have already done these sort of enterprise-wide co-pilot deployments are not seeing the productivity gain that the hype promised them. And I think, not that there's nothing there, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that it is general, big, large, right? There's also an adoption curve, whatever, but I believe, especially in a space like media, that it is the domain expertise, the knowledge of and understanding, not just not like real deep understanding of what AdOps is and what these terms mean, um, that will facilitate for us the next generation of our products as we dive deeper into decision intelligence and recommendations of what you ought to do, and all of that stuff, but also like that's what makes it powerful. So there's a generalist answer, and there's a tool for that, and we kind of need Tableau or Looker or whatever, and you're going to have the Copilot or Gemini or whatever. But then for the niche use case and the deeper knowledge expertise, you're going to want to dive deeper. You're going to want to dive into something that's understands the space in a different way, in a more
Yeah.
knowledgeable way, and that's sort of the future of the
And
company, frankly.
right now, what Laura Martin would say is that is going to go away as well because you won't need that because you'll have specialized agents. Like again, there's this
Maybe.
path of that. Right. Well, again, like 100% maybe because one of the more interesting moments yesterday was just when someone was like saying, "Hey, I ran some campaign analysis and then two different people got two different results." And she was having kind of none of it of like going like, well, that's because that's where we are today. Like none of this actually works. Just let's be clear. But it's going
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah. She
right?
got a bit pissy there, but I think
Yeah,
I think she underestimates how foundational hallucinations are to GPTs. Like this isn't a bug. This is inherent in how these products work. Maybe there's a new product that comes out in 5 years where it isn't inherent, and the current once we max out where we can grow, that'll help us build the other one. But today it is inherent. And yeah, there was someone on the pitch competition that was saying no hallucinations. I'm like, I don't believe you.
Yeah, right, right. Well, that's because they took that, like the AI part of it. Like if you're just getting it in your, like if
Yeah,
you're,
I
I
mean,
mean,
if
here's
you're
the thing,
just
right?
running Python, then yeah, it's not going to hallucinate. But if it is in fact AI, it will like you can put a lot of guardrails, and believe me, we've been smart about it as well. But like it hallucinates. It
There's a
absolutely
moment
does.
of the way again. Yeah, there's a piece of that that you have to
There's
obviously be aware of. Yeah,
like when you can sort of ask in if you plug in the Burt MCP, you can ask it like, what data sets can I access? And sometimes it'll just list them, and that's what the query that it runs to Burt actually tells. It just gives it a alphabetized list. But then sometimes it tries to sort them and be helpful. And here's the whatever audio connectors, and here's the Google-based connect. And sometimes those sorting that it elected to do are not useful, right?
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's just kind of where we are today. So I'm going to take a moment here. I'm just going to go through a couple other things I heard the last couple of days, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the agenda. Kind of, for a lot of people, we're kind of coming up on an hour, and so by all means, stick around, everyone, if you can, just for these last few things. But Shai, thank you for being a part. And again, don't have to go to place. Just want to make sure you knew where I was going with this. Um, Joe Marchese again, like some of the amazing things. Like actually what got into it almost tied off to what you were just kind of talking about is there's a aspect of like measuring what's easy, and again that's what agencies, advertisers have done. They're looking for convenience on all of these pieces, but there's also this aspect of like we should all be working on measuring on what is hard, right? Like cultural significance to any number of different things. It actually is opportunity. That again, that's going to be like the probably the underlying thing of this is just sitting there going like the water level is just always going to go up. That is not always like a great thing. We already have enough water, but if you're what I'm getting at is just this aspect of like, um, if you're a publisher and you have an audience, you should be everything we're talking about with the seller agents and everything else. There's potential with this new world where you get to tell that story and your unique story and proposition gets heard. Okay. It might be by an agent, but if that agent is tasked with finding this stuff or looking for what it has not seen before, which I would sit there and think if I'm an agency, I'm creating how do I create efficiency? Boom. How do I create differentiation? That other piece,
mhm.
right? So suddenly I'm looking across the open internet and going like, well, Meta and these people, they do what they do and they do it. I'm going to go X amount right there. Everything else is fair game for telling me something that I get to, agencies love to win and tell their wins to the brands. That's how they sell and retain them is by going like, we are awesome. We either beat the hell out of a lot of publishers and got the lowest possible price you could ever imagine. Like, or we delivered something that is actually quite
New,
difficult to do.
shiny, exciting.
Yeah,
Advertising is always about something new.
exactly. I mean, that was my point to Laura actually, as she was talking about that stuff is like, guess what? Like every time a person could just sit there and add a whole other layer of the wild card. Like that's my future role, by the way. It's going to be wild card. Um, I will say Laura did say like she's not investing, and others did really kind of include it as well. Hiring new people is kind of they're all thinking that people are going to hire agents. Feel that is a little too pendulum in one direction. I certainly think that you can't throw people at a problem anymore. Like you should be thinking about how all this plays out. The question is that like, do you have the right people so that you don't have to hire? And I think that that's the part. Again, most of my community is ad ops. You are problem solvers. Think about the next problems that you could be solving. Okay, that's you're literally getting paid right now to figure out today, but also figure out tomorrow. And that's the part of sitting there going like, if you don't have data chops, you don't have like again, I don't know that you have to learn Python. Wouldn't hurt if you did. if you got in these systems and built them out and whatever, you're going to be the one that thinks through what the next possibility is. So for all those people that are like the way they invest, you have to hear it. I just like that's a key part. Like I'm not saying like, when you get a group of this people in this room, this is where they talk. They're not investing in publishing.
Yeah.
They're investing in the shiny object that is AI. They're not necessarily wrong. They could be really wrong, but they may not be. But what are we doing for people to invest in us?
Hmm.
That is a very difficult question, which got to one of the lines that I really thought was interesting, was the chief financial officer as really, I think this was later in the afternoon, and so I don't know if I'm quite articulating this well. It's like the CFO is actually probably one of the main movers for organizations going forward because they'll get the information they need. Like again, all that stuff kind of comes to them, and they're
Hmm.
going to be the ones that decide which bets to make and so forth. And so if that's not a person you know well, I get to know them. I get to know how they think. And I would sit there and say that you could be the person that delivers to them the tools so they can navigate where the company is going to go.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Bob Lord talked a lot about Reddit. He loves Reddit, loves community. And I look at that and I go, Reddit to me is not my community. Uh, why can't we, others, create community? And the agencies are going to look for that. They're
Hmm.
looking for that. But this is one of the interesting things that he said that I'm really trying to wrap my head around. Of he was like very high on using synthetic audiences before the buy. So he was thinking like I could do less experimental buying and just simulate all of this ahead of time and then do it. And there's a piece of that of going like, no, I mean, maybe you're better at the A/B. I mean, if you're not going to give up testing. You're just going to be smarter about it. Cool.
Yeah, I
Oppor-
don't know that I buy that. Like, I think any market researcher would tell you that qualitative research focus groups, whatever, are inherently not, quantitatively valid and yet super insightful and information. Like it's,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, let's just say he kind of made a comment, right, that I just wrote down. So again, like
yeah, it's
we're giving
interesting
some,
though.
but it's one. Well, what I started thinking about again, like if they're creating these synthetic, again, think for everyone, right? Like we think of audience and data as targeting. Agencies are going to just look for more data by which to make decisions at a
Hmm.
grander scheme. And so think of it this way. Everyone's thinking about how to license to LLMs, license to brands,
Mm.
license to agencies. Start thinking, and this has come up that like the LLMs aren't as interested in content as much as they are about how people access content.
There's a UK
We know that.
publisher called Mumsnet that does something like
Yes.
this.
Hmm.
They're like a big mommy community, and they have like a GPT that you can, as a brand, you can interact with and sort of ask I guess they have years and years of these forums of kind
Oh
of
yeah.
landscape.
Oh, it is amazing what they have, right? And community, trust, opportunity to sit there and go, I can inform
Mhm.
not just your targeting, I can inform your overall strategy. You
Mhm.
are the agency to the agency, right? So all those pieces. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to wrap up here, Shai, with just a couple things. So for all of you that are thinking, looking ahead, so we have Navigator. A lot of that's starting to come together really nicely. I'm really kind of excited about that particular agenda. For this particular thing, I'm going to harp on the next day, which is AI publisher response. We have our keynotes. If you don't know who Jacob Ward is, he is someone that's been in the industry 20 years, is now doing podcasts, is on national television all the time, and just his whole thing really is the concern that AI is reducing the amount of plurality of all the things that we need. I mean, the beauty of the internet is all the voices. How do we protect that? Jody Ginsburg is CEO of the Committee to Protect Journalists, right? Why are we fighting so hard to protect publishing? Because
Mhm.
there's people behind the product here. And I feel like that was an important thing that I really wanted to add to that. Ovetta Sampson is someone who's also been a journalist and during this time, and we've been having fun with this title. I don't know if we got it official, but it's like the truth will set publishers free. There's just this aspect of kind of like ending on kind of where we're strong. Uh, but I want to make sure like everyone kind of understands the level and the in the depth of the different kind of conversations. J.R. Roberts talking about the publisher model reckoning, what we're doing wrong, what we're going to have to learn to do. John Shahada is an expert in SEO, AEO, GEO. What are the things that we have to do to make sure that we're discoverable in the future? Daniel Rosenway. By the way, when you create all this stuff with AI, you just realize it's stew. And when something comes along and says, hey, you can't use that data anymore, good luck pulling out those little pieces. So having understanding governance and compliance over the top of things actually kind of important. Again, may not be for you, but this is where I see this as a multi-person event to attend. We're going to talk about content-focused marketplaces. We're going to talk about rebuilding the editorial engine. So I want your editorial people at this event because we're going to basically right now, any publisher competes with someone who has zero cost of production. So where are the efficiencies? But then where is the authenticity? How do you save your soul? And so we've got Christine DeGanji from People. She's going to speak to that. And I'm really excited about that. Tom Descari will talk about predictability in an unpredictable marketplace. I'm going to jokingly say, in case he listens to this, that I'm really curious if he really has any answers because I think everyone's sitting there trying to figure that out. But he does have some good fundamentals to work with. Lindsay Van Kirk, we'll talk about the blocking of the bots and that strategy. And by the way, what goes into it, because it is not as easy as flipping that switch. Ozone Project's going to bring some research that they've been doing. One, and how you show up in the LLMs, but obviously also kind of what the opportunity is there. We've got a session on does AI bring brands and publishers together? We are all trying to reach people. What can we kind of do there? And I'm still packing it in. I have yet to meet an agenda where I can't try to find something else to kind of fit in there, so that you all can't not skip it. So love to see you at advertising. I keep saying I've had 2 days of this, man. AI publisher response on May 6th. And it is going to be something that is good for senior people, senior executives, as well as specialists in editorial product operations, revenue, and so forth. So, Shay, thank you for your take on the event. Thank you for talking about MCP, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.